Dear students, as far as GST is concerned, it is included in ICSE Class 10 syllabus from 2019-2020. Now in our discussion today, we will try to understand what is GST, how is GST collected, about the different components of GST, and in the end we will discuss about input tax credit, that is ITC. So this is a sequence which we will be following here, understanding GST, for how is GST collected, components of GST, and ITC, the input tax credit. Now the name of the chapter is goods and services tax. So let's first now understand the two terms goods and services. Goods means the commodities which we can purchase and bring along with us home. That is every kind of movable property other than money and security. For example, purchasing car, jewelry, mobile phones, etc. we can purchase and bring along with us home. So commodities like the cars, jewelries, mobile phones, this we will purchase and we carry along with us home. Second is the services. Services means anything other than goods, money and securities, but includes activities relating to the use of money. For example, hospitals, banks. In the hospitals, we pay the consultation fee of doctors and we get the treatment or diagnosis. In the banks, we deposit our money, we get loans. So these are all the different types of services that we get, right? So GST is applicable on both goods and services. Goods and services is divided into 5 different tax slabs for the collection of tax. This is the tax slab: 0%, 5%, 12%, 18% and 20%. So goods and services tax is levied at every stage of transfer or consumption of goods and services. Okay, now we will take a small supply chain and we will see how the chain proceeds, how the GST is calculated at every stage of transfer or consumption of goods and services. So now look at this supply chain. Suppose a commodity is transferred from the manufacturer to the wholesaler. GST is involved. That is, manufacturer will collect GST from the wholesaler. So manufacturer is collecting the GST from the wholesaler, right? Similarly, when the commodity is transferred from wholesaler to the dealer, GST is charged from the dealer. So when the wholesaler is transferring it to the dealer, dealer is paying the GST to the wholesaler. And finally, when the commodity reaches the end consumer, GST is paid by the end consumer. So at each stage of the transfer of commodity, GST is charged from the purchaser. So we repeat, we see again, manufacturer to the wholesaler is paying GST. Then from wholesaler to retailer, retailer is paying GST. And from retailer to the consumer, consumer is paying GST. So we see that at every stage of the transfer or the consumption of the goods and services, GST is levied. Okay, now let us see with the help of an example that how is GST collected. Now let us take this example to illustrate how GST is collected. Now M represents the manufacturer, W the wholesaler, R the retailer and C the end consumer. The manufacturer keeps the selling price of a mobile phone at rupees 10,000. When the manufacturer sells this to the wholesaler, the SP for the manufacturer is 10,000. In that case, CP for the wholesaler is 10,000. Wholesaler has to pay a tax at the rate of 5%, that is GST at the rate of 5% on rupees 10,000, which is to be collected by the manufacturer. So the wholesaler is paying a tax of rupees 500, that is GST at the rate of 5% of 10,000, that is 500 to the manufacturer. So the total price for the total cost of the article, the mobile phone, for the wholesaler now comes to 10,000 plus 500 equals to 10,500, but 500 is the GST, that is the tax paid to manufacturer. Wholesaler in turn, when the wholesaler wants to sell this mobile phone to the retailer, he wants to have a profit of rupees 1,000. So the wholesaler SP becomes 11,000 and the CP for the retailer is now 11,000. Now wholesaler will collect GST at the rate of 5% on rupees 11,000 from the retailer, and that comes to 550. So the amount of tax, the GST that the wholesaler is collecting from the retailer is called the output tax, and the tax which the wholesaler has already paid to the manufacturer is the input tax, or we can say output tax is the tax collected and input tax is the tax paid. So retailer now wants to sell this mobile phone to the end consumer. Retailer CP is 11,000 and he has paid a tax of 550. Now retailer wants to have a profit of 1,000. So the SP of the retailer now is 11,000 plus 1, that is equals to 12,000. CP for the consumer is 12,000. That's retailer now has to collect GST at the rate of 5% on rupees 12,000 from the consumer, or you can say the consumer now has to pay GST of at the rate of 5% on rupees 12,000, that is 600. So 600 is the amount of tax paid by the consumer to the retailer. Other way we say the 600 is the amount of tax collected by the retailer from the consumer, that is the output tax, and retailer has paid a tax of 550 to the wholesaler, that is its input tax. We can say output tax, input tax. Output tax is tax collected, input tax is tax paid. Now finally the total cost for the consumer is 12,600. Now in this supply chain we will see how the GST reaches the government, the procedure. Finally, first stage we see the manufacturer collects a GST of rupees 500 from the wholesaler. So this 500 is paid as GST to the government by the manufacturer. Here comes the wholesaler. Wholesaler's input tax, that is the tax which he has paid, 500. Wholesaler's output tax, the tax which he has collected, 550. Difference of these two, the difference of output tax and input tax, that is output tax minus input tax, or you can say tax paid, tax collected minus tax paid, is the GST. So it is 550 minus 500, that is equal to 50 rupees is the amount of GST to be paid by the wholesaler to the government. So what is the formula for GST? It is output tax minus input tax, or you can say tax collected minus tax paid. For the retailer, what is the output tax? 600. Input tax 550. Difference output tax minus input tax is rupees 50, or you can say tax collected minus tax paid is 50. So this is GST for retailer. So retailer will pay an amount of rupees 50 to the government in the form of GST. Consumer has already. Now how much is the consumer paying to the government? Consumer is not paying anything to the government in the form of tax. Now let's see what is happening here actually. Leaving aside this last point, transaction, the customer will now calculate all the taxes which have been already been paid or given to the government. 500 here, 50 here, 50 here. So 500 plus 50 plus 50, total 600 is the amount of GST already being paid to the government. Now what? The last point, customer pays the total tax of rupees 600. Now that has been paid to the retailer. The customer or the consumer does not pay any tax to the government. So always remember the last point tax, that is the tax being given by the consumer, is equal to sum of all the taxes, intermediate taxes that have already been and stages that has come across. So as the first stage tax is 500, second 50, then 50. The total should be equal to the last point tax, that is 600. So this is how the GST is collected in this supply chain from the manufacturer to the end consumer. So please have a look. Now let us discuss about the components of GST. There are three taxes applicable under this system. One is CGST, that is called Central GST. Second is the SGST, called the State GST, and finally third one is IGST, which stands for Integrated GST. CGST and SGST applies when the transaction is intrastate, means the transaction taking place within the same state. So when goods or service is provided and consumed in the same state, we have CGST and SGST. For example, a car manufactured in a factory in Jharkhand is bought by a person living in Jharkhand only. So here it is, intrastate, that means same state. Taxes goes like this: 5%, 12%, 18% and 28%. So 5% GST comprised of 2.5% CGST and 2.5% SGST. So here in intrastate, the tax 5% comprised of 2.5% of CGST and 2.5% SGST, IGST nil. Similarly, 12% of GST is 6% goes to CGST and 6% goes to SGST, no IGST. 18%, so 9% goes to CGST and 9% goes to SGST, no IGST. And 28%, 14% goes to CGST and 14% goes to SGST, no IGST. So this is all about the intra-state transaction, when the transaction takes place within the same state. Now second one, when goods or service is provided and consumed in different states. Here IGST is active. Now interstate means when the transaction takes place in different states. For example, a car manufactured in a factory in Jharkhand is bought by a person living in West Bengal. So in that case, interstate, that is in different states, if the rates are here 5%, 12%, 18% and 28%, you can see there is no CGST, no SGST. It is only IGST. This means this 5%, the total of 5% goes to the central government. Here it was half of it goes to the central and half goes to the state government in the case of intrastate. But in the case of interstate, when the transaction between different states, the full total tax goes to the central government. So this is the structure of the taxes, how the intrastate and interstate transactions takes place and how the GST is to be paid. Now we will see to the flowchart of the system, and let me draw it. Just a minute. I can draw the board first. So you can write GST so if it is intrastate and this side interstate. So in the case of intrastate, this is divided into CGST and this is SGST. And in the case of interstate, it is only IGST. So if GST is intrastate, that is within the same state, CGST and SGST. If it is interstate, different states, that is IGST. So this is how the GST is calculated, means is distributed. So when it is intrastate, it is CGST and SGST both, and in this case it is only IGST. So please have a look. Now let us see to this GST computation. How do we compute GST or how do we calculate GST? When the output GST, that is the GST collected, is greater than the input GST, that is the GST paid. That means tax collected is greater than tax paid. On output GST is greater than input GST. Then output GST, that is GST on sale, minus input GST, that GST on purchase. The difference means GST has to be paid. So difference of these two, the amount that is paid to the government, is the GST. If output GST is less than input GST, that means tax collected is less than tax paid. In that case, input GST minus output GST is the GST credit and no GST to be paid. So in this case, if the output GST is less than input GST, you don't have to pay any GST. So this is how we calculate the GST. So basically this is the one which we follow. The output GST, when it is, that is the tax collected, is greater than the tax paid, the difference of these two is paid as the GST to the government, right? Now finally we come to this, what is input credit. I just write it on the board. Now the thing is, what is input credit? What is input credit? Input credit means, I'll just write it. Input credit means at the time of paying tax on output, at the time of paying tax on output, you can reduce the tax you have already paid on inputs. If you are a manufacturer, then tax payable on output is equals to rupees 450. Tax paid on input equals to rupees 300. You can claim input credit of rupees 300 and pay only rupees 150. So what is input credit? Suppose input credit means at the time of paying tax on output, that means the tax that you collected from the next from the purchaser. So while you have to deposit that amount of tax with the government, so you can reduce the tax you have already paid on input. That means, mind it, you are collecting the tax GST, and before that you've already paid. So that amount which you have already paid is your input credit. So you have to only pay the difference of these two. So the tax that you're collecting minus tax you have already paid, the difference is the tax which is going to the government. But the amount that you have already paid, that for example you have the tax payable on output. So when you have collected the tax 450 and tax paid on input, while you have when you have purchased the article, you have paid a tax of 300. So since you have paid a tax of 300, so I will not pay 300 again. I will only pay the difference of these two, that is 150. So this rupees 300 which you have already paid is the tax input tax credit for you. Oh. So I hope this is clear now, and now we will proceed to solve the problems of this exercise. And slowly I think the very simple exercise, very simple chapter, the whatever has been discussed till now may be a little lengthier, but then when you go into the solving the problems part, I think it won't be much problem for you. So let's now start solving the problems. So let us take the first questions, and before that we'll just have a look. now that we have studied about GST, let's start solving a few problems. I think the concept will be much more clear once we solve a few problems. So let us take the first question. I'm writing it on the board. The first question is, a shopkeeper is selling a TV. A shopkeeper is selling a TV for the taxable value of rupees 30,000. GST charged is 28%. GST charged is 28%. Find or calculate SGST, CGST, GST and the total cost. So let us see the information given and accordingly let us solve it. Nothing is mentioned, that means it is an intra-state transaction, that is the transaction taking place in the same state. There is one word which is called taxable value. Now taxable value means the selling price or the purchase price, same thing. Now what is given, a shopkeeper is selling a TV for the taxable value of rupees 30,000. GST charge is 28%. So since it is an intra-state transaction, that means the transaction is taking place within the same state. So CGST will be equals to SGST will be equals to 14% of 30,000. And that will be 14 by 100 into 30,000. So it is 4,200. So you got SGST and CGST both equal to 4,200. I have taken the percentage rate is 14%. As we know, GST is given 28%, and in an intra-state transaction, SGST and CGST are equal. So the rate will be 14% for CGST, 14% for SGST, and total becomes 28%. So now CGST and SGST is equals to 4,200 each. So GST is how much? So GST will be CGST plus SGST. So that is equals to 4,200 plus 4,200, and that is equals to 8,400. So 8,400 is the GST to be paid for the TV set. Now, what is the total cost of the TV? Now, the total cost is equals to TV, cost of TV plus GST. So that is equals to 30,000 plus 8,400. That is 3,840. So this is your answer. Let me check the answer. Yeah. So I repeat, the shopkeeper is selling a TV for the taxable value of rupees 30,000. GST charge is 28%. Now calculate the SGST, CGST, GST and total cost. Now since it is an intra-state transaction, because nothing is mentioned here, so the taxable value or the selling price or the purchase price is equals to 30,000. So CGST will be equals to SGST, and that will be equals to 14% of 30,000, that comes to rupees 4,200. So 4,200 is CGST and 4,200 is also SGST. The total GST, the GST total is equals to CGST plus SGST. So it is 4,200 plus 4,200, that comes to 8,400. Or directly, if you are asked GST, the GST will be equals to 28% of 30,000. Directly you can find it. and the total cost of the TV will be the taxable value of the TV plus the GST total tax, that comes to 38400. So here it goes the first question. Now you move on to the second question now. The second question is, a shopkeeper is selling a TV. A shopkeeper is selling a TV with discount offer. With discount offer of 10% on the taxable value of rupees 30,000. Calculate SGST, CGST, GST and total amount. GST charged is 28%. So GST charged is equals to 28%. So now a shopkeeper is selling a TV with a discount offer of 10% on the taxable value. So what will be the selling price or the taxable value after discount? So the selling price after discount will be how much? 30,000 minus 10% of 30,000. So that is coming to 30,000 minus 3,000, and that is equals to 27,000. Now this is the selling price which is obtained. 27,000 is obtained after deduction of 10% discount on the taxable value. Now you have to find SGST, CGST, GST and total amount, just as it was done in question number 1. So here also SGST is equals to CGST, and that will be equals to, it is 14% of this amount, 27,000. So this will be 14 by 100 into 27,000. So 0, 0, 0, 0. So 14 to 78 is coming to 3780 equals to 3780. Now you asked what is GST. The GST is 3780 multiplied by 2. That is, this is equals to, GST is GST equals to CGST plus SGST. So that is 3780 plus 3780, that is coming to 07560. So 7560 is the GST. Now you have to find the total amount. The total amount is the price of the TV plus the GST. So total cost or amount is equals to cost of TV plus GST. So that is equals to 27,000 plus 7560, and that is coming to 27,000 plus is coming to 34560, coming to 34560. So I think it is also very simple. Only thing here, the new thing was that there was a discount on the taxable value. So whenever you apply tax, the discount amount has to be first deducted, and then we apply tax on that new selling price or new taxable value. Okay. Now please have a look. Now let's move on to the next question. The next question is number 3. A shopkeeper is selling a TV. A shopkeeper is selling a TV for rupees 35,000 inclusive of GST. Inclusive of GST. Calculate the taxable value and GST amount GST equals to 28%. Now this is a little different from the last two. Here you are given the price of the TV, the SP of the TV, 35,000, which includes the GST at the rate of 28%. So you have to find the taxable value and GST amount, because 35,000 is the value of the TV which includes the taxable value as well as the GST amount. So according to the question, the taxable value plus 28% of the taxable value is equals to 35,000. So taxable value plus 28% of taxable value, because tax is included within 35,000, so this 35,000. So you can write taxable value to 1 plus 28 by 100 equals to 35,000. So taxable value will be equals to 35,000 into 100 divided by 128. So what should be the value? 35,000 into 100 by 128. The answer is 27343. 27343.75. 0.75. This is the taxable value, and then GST amount will be, so the GST amount will be equals to 35,000 minus this taxable value, that is 27343.75, and this comes to, again I have to see to the answer, 7656.25. 7656.25. So here we go. A shopkeeper is selling a TV for rupees 35,000 inclusive of GST. The GST is already included within this 35,000. So you need to find the taxable value and the GST amount separately. So taxable value plus 28% of the taxable value will be equals to 35,000. So you take taxable common, we take, and then it is 1 plus 20,100. So from here you get taxable value as 27343.75. Then the GST amount will be 35,000 minus this taxable value, coming to 7656.25. Have a look.